Welcome, everybody. My name is Jerry. I'm from Poland Drones in the Western Cape in South Africa, and I thought it would be a good idea just to make a short video of the legalities and restrictions that apply to flying drones in South Africa. And especially I want to focus on drones for private use, hobbyists, and just generally people that enjoy flying drones for scenery and for other personal uses. So we've got specific laws in South Africa that governs both private use and commercial use. And it is very important to understand what your legal limitations are when flying either privately or for commercial gain. Now, I'm not going to expand on commercial gain at this point. It is mostly for private use that I would talk about, and I'm just going to point out a couple of things that I think is important for everybody to know, so that you don't run into trouble. And obviously it is designed that way to mitigate risk and to make flying safer for everybody, manned aircraft as well as remotely piloted aircraft, as we sometimes share the same airspace in South Africa. Now, to go to understand this, we need to look at the Civil Aviation Authority authorities guidelines, and that we will find on the South African Civil Aviation Authority's website under caa.co.za. So the first thing we want to do, just have a general understanding of the layout of the website, and then at the bottom you will find under legal, you will find legislation. We're just going to open this up, and then we will find all the acts of the legislation, national South Africa. What we want to do then is click on regulations, and we want to find Civil Aviation Regulations 2011. So when we click on that, it opens up an index of all the parts within the regulations. And then particularly, we want to look at part 101 that talks about remotely piloted aircraft systems, or RPAS, or drones as it's commonly known. So if we open up part 101, it will bring us to the general provisions, subpart 1, subpart 2, the approval and registration, and personal licensing, and then the operating certificate, which is more leaning towards the licensing side of things. So we want to especially look at part 101.01.2 for private operations. So if we click on that, it will open up another set of regulations which pertains to private operations. And please read through everything here just to get a basic understanding of the context of this part. And then just go down to private operations. Now, there's certain sub-regulations, provisions that do not apply to private operations of RPAS. You can go through this, but mainly the first point I want to make is in point 3 of part 101.01.2 that specifically states that private operations of RPAS shall be conducted in RV loss with a class 1A or 1B RPA only. So only in the restricted visual line of sight with a class 1A or 1B RPA. So to find out the classification and just to understand what the classification entails, we can go to grouping and classifications, and we can open up CCATS 101, and then the classification of RPAS systems. And this table will specify what it means. So class 1A, so everything here is line of sight. So it means it must be in visual meteorological conditions. And it must be in visual flying conditions. Now, you have 1A, you have 1B. So you've got a restricted line of sight that is pertaining, especially when we're looking at private use. It's the only classification that is allowed for private use, RV loss, and that is has an energy impact of less than 15, maximum height of 400 feet or below 400 feet, and a maximum takeoff mass of 1.5 kilograms. Now, 1B, also line of sight, you get RV loss, restricted visual line of sight, and extended visual line of sight. Now, for private use, still the only one that is applicable is RV loss, and you still have the 15 kilojoules in impact or energy at impact. The height is below 400 feet, and the maximum takeoff mass is 7 kilos. That is the limit for the drones that are classified as 1A and 1B. And that will specifically be for or have an impact on private drones or the use of private drones within the sector. So you can read through this, just get a general understanding of what it entails to fly a RPAS or a drone as a private operator, and also maybe just look at the different subsections to understand what you need to obtain, what regulations to follow if you want to become a licensed pilot that is issued a remotely piloted license or remotely piloted aircraft license, which is quite a lengthy process. You have to pass a couple of subjects that is prescribed within the regulations, part 101, technical standards and regulations, and also what it entails to be operating under a a operating certificate and what that entails. That is quite an expensive exercise for a single-use operator, and it is quite cumbersome to obtain that operating certificate, and it can take up to 2 years to get to that point where you are allowed to, or are issued an ROC for commercial use. So I just want to point out that private operators fly with the understanding that it is not for commercial gain. So whenever you fly your drone, if you sell that footage for commercial gain, then you will automatically fall under the regulations pertaining to RPL license. And then you have to present or have to have a remotely piloted license. You have to have a medical class 3 aviation medical. You have to present a language proficiency document, class 4 and higher. You have to complete the tests that is given or prescribed, and you have to do practical a practical test. But before you can do your final skills test, you also have to pass a restricted radio license course that is approved by the CAA. So you will have to do entire course on radio work, aeronautical charts, how to read them, how to understand which airspace you are in, and then write the exam at an accredited CAA station where you can write those exams. And you have to pass all the exams with 75% and above. And then finally, you will do a radio telephony practical exam to obtain your radio telephony license or restricted radio license, as it's commonly known. Just want to point that out. The moment you sell whatever footage you have captured, you automatically fall under that regulations, and you have to comply with everything within the regulations for commercial use, because it's for commercial gain. Now, if you do not sell your footage and you use it for private use, then you have to look at the regulations concerning private operations and understand where you can fly, what the implications are, what the rules are, and what you can do and what you cannot do. So if we go to provisions of regulations, let me just see if I don't have it open already. My apologies, it sometimes takes a while for this website to load. Just want to go back quickly. Okay, so here we go. So the RPA remotely piloted aircraft operations under subpart 5 deals with the conditions under which you can fly and what it entails and what you should take note of. So you should take note of the weather conditions, whether it's safe to fly under visual conditions or visual meteorological conditions. And whether it's declared visual flight rules or instrument flight rules. RPAS are not allowed to fly in instrument flight rules when a airport is declared IMC, then you are not allowed to fly within that airspace until it's declared VMC. So go through this, look at weather conditions. A good application or app to use is UAV weather. It will tell you everything you need to know about a specific place in terms of aviation conditions, whether it's good to fly or not. And specifically looking at the KP index, we do not fly drones with a KP index greater than 4. So you have weather conditions, you're landing on roads. So all this is saying you're not allowed to operate in certain conditions. You're not allowed to land on roads. You're not allowed to fly in controlled airspace. You're not allowed to release any object or substance from the drone. You're not allowed to carry dangerous goods. You have to look at accidents and incidents and what that entails, because it's injury or death to a person, damage to property, destruction of the aircraft, and beyond economical repair. And also loss of control that needs to be reported to the ROC. Now, the ROC holder is the operating certificate holder, and that is a person or a entity that has been approved by the Civil Aviation Authority to have a operating license, and this is mostly for commercial use. But in general, it's a good idea to understand from a private use perspective that this is the greater areas of damage or risk that a person flying a drone can occur, and also the third-party liability that lies within this specific incident. So thereafter, talking about consumption of alcohol and drugs, your operating requirements from your base station, excuse me, and then precautions and safety considerations, general restrictions. Now it says no person shall operate an RPA unless they have in their possession a valid RPA pilot license, a copy of the ROC, a certificate of registration for each aircraft, a copy of the ROA, user manual of the RPA, and then it says no RPA shall tow another aircraft, perform aerial or aerobatics, be flown in formation, except by the holder of an ROC. So when you apply for an ROC, you will outline what type of work you will be doing, or operations you will be doing, like surveying, like doing film shoots or whatever the use case is, and then get licensed by the CAA and being issued a operating certificate. Then you are allowed to fly within these conditions, with certain limitations also for license holders. So a license holder is not allowed to fly above 400 feet above the surface within a radius of 10 kilometers from an aerodrome. However, a licensed pilot operating under an ROC may fly within a radius of 10 kilometers from an aerodrome, but he has or she has to file a flexible use of airspace application and also file a flight plan. So no drone is also allowed to fly within restricted or prohibited airspace or adjacent to above nuclear power plants, prison, police station, crime scenes, court of law, national key points, or strategic installation. Okay, so just have a read through this. This beyond visual line of sight is normally for licensed operators, also night operations, unless you're flying in RV loss. You need to understand the conditions for RV loss, and the conditions for RV loss. Let me just get them. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to get this working. Okay, so basically what RV loss means is that it means a restricted visual line of sight. The parameters are as follows. Normally we have a radius of 500 meters from the pilot in command in visual line of sight conditions, not above 400 feet. So everything below 400 feet. However, for a private operator, the maximum height is specified to be only 150 feet. You're not allowed to fly higher than 150 feet above ground. So that's the first limitation. Under RV loss, you are not allowed to fly higher than the highest obstacle within 300 meters of the pilot in command. So if you are flying in a suburban area where there's lots of houses and maybe flats, you might have a duplex there, which is lower than 150 feet, and that height of that duplex will determine your maximum height that you are allowed to fly at, and that may be below 150 feet. So take that into consideration. If you are in an open space or public open space, you are restricted to 500 meters laterally from the pilot in command, and also horizontally 150 feet, unless you have an obstacle within 300 meters. You have to comply with the maximum height of that obstacle. Now, operations in vicinity of properties and structures and buildings. No RPA shall be operated within a lateral distance of 50 meters from any structure or building. So this is a general rule of thumb. You're not allowed to fly within 50 meters from any structure unless you are the holder of an ROC and the operation has been approved by the director. Permission is obtained from the owner of such structure or building. An operator conducting an operation as contemplated in subpart 1 or subregulation 1 shall take such measures as are necessary to ensure the safety of all persons on the ground assessing such building or in the vicinity of such structure. Now, further to that, you're not allowed to operate in the vicinity of public roads, and there the 50-meter rule will also apply. So no person shall operate an RPA over a public road, along the length of a public road, or at a distance of less than 50 meters from a public road, unless you're a holder of a ROC, meaning that you are licensed and registered. And then in the case of operations over a public road, such road has been closed for public use, and reasonable care has been taken to ensure the safety of road users, pedestrians, and so forth in the event of loss of control of the RPA. Okay, and then it goes more into detail in terms of radio communications, pre-flight preparations, and then the duties of the pilot, which is an important factor, flight operations, right of way, and just to point out, all manned aircraft have right of way. So if you have your drone up in the air and you've got a low flying aircraft, yes, right of way, you have to bring down your drone as quickly as possible. And the rest is more looking at conditions and regulations for licensed pilots. Excuse me. So just one thing I want to point out, that it is generally a good idea that when you fly your drone, the fuel or the volts that you are or have available, those in the entire system, the volt or the battery time of the RPA or of the battery is known as total endurance of the battery or of the flight, and it is specified that during VLOS operations, the remote pilot shall ensure that the aircraft has enough fuel or electrical charge to complete the flight. And then, very important, plus a reserve of 10%. So whenever you do a flight and you come back after landing, you should have 10% left as a charge on your battery. So during BVLOS operations, this is also beyond visual line of sight, the same rule applies. And this rule is generally a very good rule of thumb, and it's prescribed that you should always have enough power left after landing. And it sometimes happens that drones are flown, the wind kicks in and the drone fights the wind to come back, and it runs out of power, and then it just crashes to the ground, which can cause serious damage to property, to persons, and also create fires if you have lithium ion or lithium polymer batteries. Okay, so have a look through this and just understand what the limitations are for private use operators. And just try and understand what your limitations are. If you fly beyond the limitations, you run the risk of being heavily fined by the authorities, or even your equipment seized and confiscated. Okay, so that in short is private operations. Let's just go to this website that doesn't want to open always. But in general, this is a good idea where to look for the regulations concerning private operations. So if we go back to the civil aviation website, the next thing I want to point out, which is a source of information to any pilot, is information of the industry. We go and we look at the aeronautical information, and then what you can do is you can look at the aeronautical information publications, and there you have three general subsections. So you have general, en route, and aerodromes. So in these sections you will find radio frequencies, you will find specific information about aerodromes, and specific information about restricted areas, danger areas, and prohibited areas. Best way to search through these is to download them and then do a term search on whatever you are looking for. Okay, so just finally, I want to show you guys a typical aeronautical chart, and pardon my cruel way of doing things. Doesn't seem like my keyboard is working, so let's just do this. So if we look at a normal chart like this, this is an aeronautical chart for the Johannesburg area. And there you can see this specific airspaces that is applicable to Johannesburg and the surrounding areas. So if you zoom in, you will find that the Johannesburg control zone, sorry for that, not used to talk a lot, so okay. So what you have here is the Johannesburg control zone, and also the Waterkloof Airport, which is also a control zone, and it will be demarcated by these dashed lines, the blue dashed lines, and that will indicate a CTR. As you can see here, we've got the Waterkloof CTR, and it is from ground up to 7,600 altitude. Then on this side, we have the Johannesburg CTR control zone, from ground to 7,600 feet altitude. So if we work our way outwards from the CTRs, you will mostly, above the CTR, you will get a TMA. Now the TMA will start above the CTR, so it will most probably start from 7,600 feet altitude. So if we look at the TMA for Johannesburg, then we will see that Johannesburg TMA, or traffic control area, or terminal control area, starts from 7,600 feet altitude to a flight level of 110, and it is Class C airspace. And just as a general note, that most airspaces in South Africa are Class C airspaces. Your TMAs, your CTAs, your control zones, your ATZs, they are all Class C airspaces. and that means that they are all controlled airspaces. So looking at this chart here, we have our CTR. Above that, we've got the TMA, and then above the TMA, we have the CTA, which normally starts above the TMA. So if we go to the TMA or the CTA, you will see that Johannesburg CTA starts from flight level 110. That is where the TMA ends. So you can see here Johannesburg TMA, flight level 110. So the CTA will start above that at flight level 110 up to flight level 195. So it's like a layered cake upside down. You have your control area, which is established around busy airports. You have your terminal control areas, the TMAs, that starts from the level above this, the CTR, to a specific perimeter, and then you have your CTAs above that, above the TMA, just to control aircraft in the area, because this is a busy airspace. The TMAs and the CTAs is used to separate aircraft from other aircraft. So understanding charts, you will also find on the charts, you will find beyond the CTR, below the TMA. So the CTR goes from ground up, and to a specific level, and then the TMA will be above that, but obviously the TMA doesn't start from the ground up, so you've got specific airspaces below that, and you can have a FAD, which is a danger area. You can have a FAR, which is a restricted area, and then you can have a FAP, which is a prohibited area, like we have here, FAP 80. Now, FAP, a prohibited zone, you are allowed to fly in that prohibited zone, but only with the permission of the authority that governs that zone. So obviously, for private use, you will not be allowed to fly in that area. As you can see, it's from the ground up to 1,000 feet above ground level. That also goes for your FADs, which is danger areas. Normally this is training areas. So just to show you, the area here that has these horizontal lines, these feathery lines, shows which FAD, what the perimeters of the FAD is, and also it extends from ground up to 7,500 feet altitude. Okay, so you as a private pilot are allowed to fly in a FAD, but the limitations of the private use operator will apply. So the limitations are 150 feet above ground level, and horizontally not more than 500 meters. The 50-meter rule will apply, and all permissions should be obtained prior to your flight, and all safety and risk mitigation aspects should be taken into account before you embark on your flight. And then also understand that whenever there's a problem or an emergency with your drone, and that caused damage to the drone, damage to other property, collision with manned aircraft, or whatever the emergency situation is, that you will be responsible for that incident, and it will be investigated by the CAA, and ultimately they will decide whether it will be you will be criminally charged or not. Okay, so just another thing I want to show you guys in my crude way. So I just want to open up the Google Earth Pro over here. So if you go to the ATNS website, let me just go there quickly. Let me see where it is. Okay. So if you go to the ATNS website, atns.com, you will, if you scroll down, you will find this RSA airspace in 3D. You click on that, and at the bottom here you've got a KMZ file. You can click on that and download that KMZ file. This is a data file, RSA South African data file, that will overlay flight regions and airspaces on Google Earth Pro. So, and then when you open it, if you already have a Google Earth Pro installed, you just double click on that file wherever it's stored in your computer, and it will do the overlay itself. So just to go back to that, we go to Google Earth Pro. So now, as you can see here, you have the RSA data that is been overlaid on the Google Earth Pro, and it will have all the boxes ticked. We don't want all that information to clutter up our screen, so we're just going to have aerodromes, licensed military, and so forth. We don't really want heli stops unless you want that or are interested in heli stops. We don't want the VHF omnidirectional beacons. We don't have don't want the navigation directional beacons. We don't want waypoints. It just clutters up the screen at this point. It's no use for drone operators. We definitely want airspaces. Now, the FIRs, or the flight information regions, of the larger airspaces that divide South Africa into Cape Town area west and Cape Town area east, and then you've got your Johannesburg areas, and that is flight information regions. We don't want to look at that for now. If we switch on CTAs, control areas, and TMAs, this is what it will look like. If you go into a specific color shading here, so for instance, we click on this green part here, it will say FA Cape Town CTA Alpha for upper, and it starts from flight level 145 up to flight level 195, and it normally gives the frequency in use. So in this case it's 119.7 megahertz. But we, as drone operators, do not operate in this airspace. So what we'll do is we will disengage CTAs. And then you have your TMAs also upper, flight level 085, 8,500 feet, to flight level 145, which is 14,500, and the frequency is 119.7. Okay, we're not flying in those areas, so we're going to disengage TMAs. So what we're left with is your air traffic zones and your control zones, and your FADs, danger areas, prohibited areas, and restricted areas. Then you can have your glider areas engaged or not. It's your choice. I don't engage them at this point. You want to leave other airspaces engaged. You don't want to have all the navigation routes on, or all the conventional routes. Just makes it difficult to see as a drone pilot in which airspace you are flying. You want VFR routes, just for information, but it will also clutter up the screen. So what you can do is just disengage VFR routes, which stands for Visual Flying Rules. Disengage that, and then you've got a much more cleaner and open file to look at. Now, if you want to fly in these airspaces or any airspace within the boundary of the Cape Town Special Rules Area East to Special Rules Area West, and I believe this is Flight Information Service West. You can find a position as you normally do by zooming in, and just understand which airspace you are flying in. So for instance, let's just make an example here. Let's say you want to fly in Hout Bay, Hout Bay, Fischhoek, Kommetjie, Muizenberg, great scenery, you want to take some pictures there. Then the further you zoom in, the more information of the landscape you will get, and you can pinpoint yourself by zooming in. And then if you click on that area, it will say, in this instance, Cape Town Special Rules Area West. This is the frequency in use by aircraft, and just know in which area you are. So if you are in a special rules area, this is normally below a TMA and outside of a control zone or a air traffic zone. So this is uncontrolled airspace. We licensed operators have to make TBA broadcast regularly, traffic information broadcast by aircraft, but that is not applicable to private drone operators, because they're only flying up to 150 feet above ground level, so 150 feet and below. If you look at the Cape Town CTR, that has this blue outline here. If you zoom into FACT, Cape Town Airport, you can click on that. It will tell you that it is the Cape Town CTR control zone from the ground up to 2,500 feet altitude and the frequency in use. Now, as a private operator, you are allowed to fly within this airspace, but the rules for private use still apply. So not higher than 150 feet in restricted visual line of sight conditions, and all the other applicable rules like the 50-meter rule and not flying close to people or over a crowd or within 50 meters of buildings and so forth, unless you have the permission of each and every single entity that will be within 50 meters range of your aircraft or of your drone. Okay, so just for interest's sake, the green areas, green outlines here are national parks. As a drone operator, even with or just for private use, you are not allowed to fly within these areas. So you will have your national parks and forests and sensitive areas, conservation areas, that is highly sensitive to fires and to damage to those areas. And as a private operator, you are not allowed under any circumstances to fly within those areas. Just make sure that if you are visiting a national park or a botanical garden, that you are not allowed to fly in that space. Now, I believe you might get permission, but that permission must be given by the local authority governing those areas, and you should get that in the form of a written approval. Now, but as a general rule, you're not allowed to fly within these areas. So the red areas we normally look at as FADs. This is danger areas, but it's also known as your normal flight training areas, so where aircraft will go and practice flight maneuvers. So here we have a FAD 200, Cape Town flying area, and it's from the ground up to 4,000 feet altitude. You are allowed to fly within this area, even if it extends from the ground up, and also all the rules still apply. This is just a good way to understand airspaces. So if you want to go ahead and download the KZM file, or do an overlay on Google Earth Pro, you will have a good idea of the airspaces in South Africa, and it will give you all the airspaces that is applicable to South Africa, and the Johannesburg airspace as well. So yeah, I suggest downloading it and just trying to understand what the airspaces look like, what they mean, where you're allowed to fly and where you're not allowed to fly. Having that information, general information available, will save you a lot of headaches going forward, because you might fly in an area that is totally prohibited to fly in. You publish the material, even not for commercial gain, and somebody from the CAA or law enforcement will pick it up, and you will be in a world of hurt if you have flown within a restricted area or a prohibited area without permission, or within national parks or national key points, or close to police stations, or whatever prohibited areas there are in South Africa. So just take those things in consideration as a private operator flying for private use or as a hobbyist. Just take those things into consideration. Okay, let me just see if there's something else. I can share with you. It doesn't seem that way. Let me just go back quickly and just change. Let's just go back to the websites. So you've got the ATNS website where you can download the KMZ file that will overlay the Google Earth Pro flight airspaces of South Africa. You have the South African Civil Aviation Authority's website, where you will find the legislation pertaining to private use. You will also have information for the industry, where you can get all the information of the AIPs, AIC circulars, or the index of aeronautical information circulars, and also aeronautical information publication supplements, some aeronautical charts, and so forth. VFR charts, NOTAMs, summaries and publications. So NOTAM stands for Notice to Airmen, and what you can find under NOTAMs, if you go to the publications, a NOTAM will be issued for airmen to take note of, and it is normally valid for 3 months or less. And you've got your it's a navigation NOTAM. You've got various different NOTAMs, notice to airmen, that you need to take into consideration. Let me just go to the summary also. Just take note of anything that might have that are pertaining to any flight that you undertake. The other thing I want to show you guys is that to get good information, weather information, to determine whether your flight is going to be safe or not, is to go to windy.com. Okay, so we are in the Cape Town area at the moment. So if you take that away, this is how it will open up. So if you're in the Cape Town area, and you know that the designator, so Cape Town will be FACT, and you can open that up. That will give you your METARs and your TAFs. Now, the METARs is current weather conditions, and TAFs are weather forecasts. Now, for the untrained eye, this might just seem like gibberish, but if you click on raw mode, it will describe the conditions in a much more understandable way. If you are trained to understand the METARs like this, then you can just have it this way. But it is an extremely important thing just to notice what are the weather conditions, or what they will be like during your flight. So if we look at this meter over here, and we go into roll mode, and just remember this is all in Zulu time. So this was issued 57 minutes ago. The wind is at 180 degrees. at 11 knots. The ceiling and visibility is okay. The temperature is 17 degrees, the dew point 7 degrees. The QNH, the local pressure of Cape Town airport is 1014 hectopascals, and no significant change is expected. So if you go back into raw mode, you can read that the same. So you will have FA Cape Town, the date, the 24th, at 1500 Zulu time. So that will be 1700 or 5 o'clock, 1700, because it's in Zulu time. So South Africa is 2 hours ahead, or +2 from UTC. Then you've got your wind direction, 180 degrees at 11 knots. Ceiling and visibility okay. You've got your temperature, you've got your dew point, your local station pressure, QNH of 1014, and no significant change. So this is a good site to just have a look at the weather and understand what the weather is and what the forecast will be for the time you will be flying. Okay, guys, that's it for now. If you guys want me to make more of these videos and go into it more in more detail, just give me a shout in the comment section, and I'll try and make a more comprehensive video or explanation of what RPAS flights or drone flights entail in South Africa, pertaining to the laws and regulations and so forth. So thank you for watching. Have a great day.